I didn't get one because Stacy didn't do them today. I just grabbed the one over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, folks, are you ready?
Ready?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It is July 10th, 2014, and this is the monthly meeting of the District of Columbia Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. I'm Robert Spagnoletti, chair of the board, and joining me today is Deborah Latham, one of the board members, constituting a quorum. We are here in room 540 South at 1 Judiciary Square. And Ms. Richards has joined us as well, so constituting a full quorum of the board. I'll begin by adopting seeing whether there are any changes to the agenda that had been posted consistent with the Open Meetings Act. Ms. Latham, any changes? Ms. Richards? No, that's fine. Okay, so we'll adopt the posted agenda by consensus. As to the minutes, we'll note formally that thanks to the miracle of modern technology, we can actually post the entire meeting on our website, so you can hear not just read just our summary of what occurred, but you can actually listen to everything that's occurred. So we're going to be posting just the audio portion of the meetings, and that will constitute...
Well, the full video.
The full video as well?
Mm-hmm. The whole thing.
The meeting we did last week, though, was just we didn't post that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Because that dealt with a particular contested adversary hearing. But we'll be able to post the entire meeting on the website. And with that, we'll go ahead and turn to the Director of Open Government for her report.
Thank you. I'm pleased to inform the board that the Mayor's Office launched on June 16th FOIA Express. Unfortunately, the Mayor's Office has not... Oh, I'm sorry, Darrin, did you want to do one more? I'm sorry. Hold on just one moment.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Before the Director of Open Government gives her report, I just wanted to formally recognize a special guest we have today, Ms. Nia Camara. Am I pronouncing that correctly? From Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She's a middle school student visiting the District of Columbia this summer, and I hope learning a great deal about government ethics. And so welcome to these proceedings.
It's good to have you.
Unfortunately, the Mayor's Office has not included me on implementation of the FOIA Express system and has declined my request as FOIA officer for the city administrative access to the system. Because I've been excluded from the process, I posed several questions to Stephanie Johnson of the Mayor's Office on June 16 and CC'd Brian Flowers. Just for the board's edification, I know that Bob is aware of this. Ms. Johnson is the assistant to the Chief of Staff and Deputy Chief of Staff, and Mr. Flowers, of course, is the General Counsel to the Mayor. I posed the following questions. Are the agencies required to grandfather in all of the FOIA requests processed this year into FOIA Express, or are agencies expected to begin processing requests in FOIA Express as of today, which would have been June 16th? If agencies will be required to grandfather in all FOIA requests for fiscal year 14, will AINS, which is the vendor, work with the agencies which receive the highest volume of FOIA requests, namely NPD, Fire and EMS, DCRA, and the Office of Police Complaints, to transfer process requests into the new system? Number 3, there are some agencies that require special fields to be included in FOIA Express for proper processing. I understand that FIMS is already working with AINS to add the fields. Has the Executive Office of the Mayor communicated with the Metropolitan Police Department, the Department of Consumer Regulatory Affairs, and the Office of the Attorney General to determine if those agencies will also require similar fields? Has the Executive Office of the Mayor communicated with the Office of the Attorney General to determine what viewing access agencies will need to review all agency native files, non-public and unredacted files produced in response to FOIA requests? The Executive Office of the Mayor, in its consideration of requests that are appealed, should have similar viewing access. Number 5, the Office of Open Government under DC Code 2-593 may also issue advisory opinions on the implementation of FOIA. Will the Office of Open Government have similar viewing access to that of OAG and the Executive Office of the Mayor? How many agencies currently have access to FOIA Express? Will you please add my email address to the distribution list for the Open Government Liaisons? Will all agencies, subordinate and independent, be able to access FOIA Express? For those agencies that only process a few requests per year, what accommodation is being made to ensure that those requests are entered into FOIA Express? I did include a parenthetical here that says that I'm happy to pitch in here if necessary. How long will the files be maintained on FOIA Express and in the public reading room? Whatever the duration, it should be noted that each agency website and in the public reading room, it should be posted on each agency website and in the public reading room. Also, the implementation of FOIA Express and the duration for which documents will be maintained should be included on agency retention schedules and in the DCMR. What was the decision concerning the number of days between the production of documents to a requester and the publication of those documents in the public reading room? And finally, will there be a hard launch of FOIA Express, meaning an announcement to the public? I told him, and this is addressed specifically to Mr. Flowers, that I think we should give FOIA officers a few weeks to work with the system before any formal announcement is made. I did not receive a response to my inquiries until June 30th, which was a full 2 weeks after the launch of the program. Namely, what is particularly vexing here is that I've not been given administrative access, nor will the agencies, is there any specificity given to the agencies for grandfathering in their FOIA requests. Additionally, I myself was unable until today to fully access FOIA Express and enter the FOIA requests that have been received and processed by Bega this fiscal year because IT service was not informed nor instructed about the additional security patch required to be installed on the PCs of FOIA officers who have licenses for the FOIA Express system. Instructions were apparently sent to IT personnel under Octo, but not to IT Service. I requested on July 2nd that the Mayor's Office send an additional communication to Octo, FOIA officers, and IT Service with instructions on completing the install. I requested complete instructions from the vendor and personally sent the instruction to an IT Service technician assigned to my trouble ticket so that he could complete the install for me. To date, I am not aware if the Mayor's Office has sent that additional communication as requested. In addition to my grave concern about the insistence of the Mayor's Office in excluding the Office of Open Government from the implementation of a FOIA processing system and from the management of the system, there is no, and I would make this clear to the board, there still is no clear direction on agency use of the system as it relates to transferring in any current FOIA requests or prior FOIA requests. Or what the reporting requirements will be for this fiscal year. Because as you recall, the reporting requirements go through the Office of the Secretary. What is going to end up happening is what I foresee is that for those agencies that are successful in not only entering the system, but using the system in some, versed manner, will begin entering their FOIA requests in that system. So essentially, we're going to end up with 2 reports at the end of the year for FOIA for the fiscal year. We're going to end up with the standard hard copy reporting that goes to the Office of the Secretary, and we're going to end up with the FOIA reports that are being generated by the FOIA Express system. Additionally, I do not know what the direction is to the Office of the Secretary concerning the FOIA reporting requirement now that this system is in place. These are all questions that I would love to get answers to from the Mayor's Office, but have been excluded from the entire process. As part of the city's Open Government and Transparency Initiative announced last fall, the district has required all agencies to display on their websites information which must be proactively disclosed under FOIA. To facilitate this process, the Mayor's Office requested that agencies appoint Open Government coordinators to comply with Open Government requirements. Although I have requested for months to be included in that process, I was just added to the email distribution list last week. I have on several occasions received phone calls from those individuals tapped by those agencies to oversee compliance with the mayor's directive and have had to ask those FOIA officers time and time again if they would please share a copy of the email with me so that I could properly assist them. As a point of progress, I did receive on July 8th an email sent to all agency open government coordinators indicating which agencies have complied or failed to comply with the mayor's open government directive. And to add to the irony and overall inefficiency of the process, the city's open government webpage fails to list Bega or the Office of Open Government at all. I have made every effort to collaborate with the mayor's office, but the tactic of including the Office of Open Government in a mere cursory fashion does an extreme disservice to our government and the residents of the city. In this instance, it has done nothing but reinforce an already inefficient FOIA process, which I am certain has added to the frustration of FOIA officers and residents attempting to avail themselves of FOIA. In fact, I received a letter this week from Fritz Mohlhauser with the ACLU requesting that the Office of Open Government investigate and make finding if agencies are not doing FOIA work properly and why, and issue an advisory opinion as authorized by DC Code 2-593C to the mayor requesting the urgent attention of his office and all agencies restoring FOIA functionality. The letter is prompted by more than unusual delays recently encountered by Mr. Mohlhauser in receiving responses to requests and appeals which may, in large part, be directly linked to the improper implementation of FOIA Express. I have included in your briefing materials the complete exchange with the mayor's office concerning FOIA Express and their responses to my many inquiries, and also the letter from Mr. Mohlhauser. Bega meetings, hearings, and recordings policy. Although I was initially informed that Bega could purchase a widget to allow Bega to live stream its meetings, DCNet says it does not at this time have the system capability to do so. Hopefully that will change next year, and I have put in a request to include Bega in testing as soon as DCNet is ready. Meanwhile, the board must make a determination about what our standing policy will be concerning the posting of video recordings of public hearings, as the legislation is clear for the posting of public meetings. Trainings. On June 12th and 19th, I conducted Open Meetings Act trainings with the Education Licensure Commission and the Health Benefits Exchange, respectively. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of presenting to members of the Obama administration's Young African Leaders Initiative. I gave a lecture at Howard University on effective communication in public management and government transparency principles. The initiative is a long-term effort to invest in the next generation of African leaders and to strengthen the partnerships between the United States and Africa. Finally, as it relates to training, the yearly FOIA officer training is scheduled to take place on July 15th. The FOIA Express vendor Ains has agreed to attend to answer questions about the system. A representative from the mayor's office will also be on hand to answer questions about the mandates for the use of the system. The Bega website. On June 24th, we posted the Bega Best Practices Report on Madison, D.C. Madison, D.C. is free open source software that allows users to interact with specific pieces of legislation, engage with other civic-minded citizens, explore documents from other sponsors or legislative bodies, and suggest changes or features by providing feedback. We submitted the Best Practices Report as a trial run to see just what type of response we would receive. So far, there have been no comments, but over 100 people have read the report and have spent quite a few minutes reading the report. I do think that this will be a useful tool in the weeks before and after the upcoming Best Practices Symposium. From what I know so far, Councilmember Grosso is the first council member to use Madison, D.C. on a piece of legislation in recent weeks. For the period between June 6th and July 9th, a total of 1,306 visitors with 1,962 sessions visited the site. That's 45.5% of those sessions were from new visitors. These numbers represent a dip in last month's numbers, most likely due to a summertime holiday lag. Each session duration remains at about 4 minutes, with each visitor visiting 4 pages at a time. The Resources for Lobbyists page received the most activity with 490 page views for that period. That concludes my report.
Go ahead.
I think we're all quite concerned about the resistance you're meeting from the executive office of the mayor. And I think it's time for the board to step in and say something formally. You've outlined over a course of months the resistance, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. And I think you done everything humanly possible to foster an ongoing working relationship.
I mean, I completely agree. I've had, you've had, and I've had conversations with folks in the executive office about trying to bridge the divide, if you will, and there is some understandable natural tension between an independent agency such as ourselves pushing from your vantage point, the administration, the executive, to do better in all these different areas and to get it right, and they're having to kind of march along and getting it together. That being said, is that they wouldn't even be here at the point at which FOIA Express is being implemented, but for your efforts to keep kicking them along. It's been sitting on the back shelf forever until you showed up, and then to exclude you, I really think is inexcusable. Can I just ask a couple of questions? I see that in the response that Ms. Johnson sent to you on June 30th, she said, the Office of Open Government will not have administrative privileges. What would having those privileges enable you to do that you can't do given what limited access you have now?
Well, what it allowed me to do would be able to see documents that are being processed by other agencies. Now, it's certainly not my intention to go in the system and snoop around. I don't have the time for that. But what the purpose of it will be is that just as FOIA officers have to do by phone now, where they call me and explain to me over the phone a particular request that they received and documents they're considering producing in response to that request, I have to go by their description. And that's only if it's a large volume of documents, I have no way of actually viewing those documents and providing a fully educated response.
Right.
I can only go by what they're telling me over the phone. So the system will allow me to go in and to be able to review, and then I'm requested to be able to take a look at some of the proposed redactions to those documents because you can see the history of the redactions there. It will also allow me to comment within the system. To share information with FOIA officers that way. I'm also concerned, too, that there's going to be a breakdown with the change of administration. If there isn't someone that's got full administrative access to the system that's independent of the changeover, that some things are going to fall through the gaps. Now, a FOIA officer who serves in my capacity, it's not a wholly unusual request for someone in my capacity to have that type of access, but to have, I don't know. I don't know what the rationale is for the mayor's office.
All right. Well, I guess this is what I would suggest. I agree with Ms. Richards that it's time that you're not. Excuse me one second. That you shouldn't be alone crying in the wilderness here about this. What I would ask you to do is to put together in a draft letter form for us some of the issues that you raised here today, along with a formal request, and then for our review and editing, and obviously in signature directly to the mayor and to the chairman of the council, so that both the executive and legislative branches can see what we're trying to have is eminently reasonable given what your position is and what the board's responsibility is, and making it very clear that if we're going to be doing the job that the council intended us to do and that the mayor signed off on, the kind of access that you're asking for and information and participation that you're asking for is to be expected. And it's not, from our view, something that's optional. It's absolutely required in order for us and for you to do the job that you were hired to do and that we were appointed to do. Ms. Latham.
I agree 100% with that, and I wanted to ask, or in addition to the letter, are there individuals that we as board members should be speaking to?
Yes, I think for certain that would have to be, particularly since the council member is in charge of oversight, Mr. McDuffie, Councilman McDuffie. But, I don't want to point fingers, so I don't know. I can just simply say that the mayor's administration as a whole, I don't know if that means that it would be a productive conversation with Mr. Murphy, his chief of staff. Okay. I can say for certain that Mr. Flowers has, for his part, from the impression I receive, been doing whatever he can to fill me in as much as possible, but Mr. Flowers should also be included in that conversation.
I have a tremendous amount of respect both for Mr. Flowers and Mr. Murphy, but it's the mayor who appointed us, who asked us to do this for him, to get the ball rolling with this board and to set up the Office of Open Government, which had been languishing unstaffed for years and years. So I think that it's appropriate to go directly to, we certainly can have those conversations. I think we go directly to the mayor and to the chair of the council and make our very strong views felt. We're not asking for you to take over the FOIA Express system. We're just asking you to have the tools that you need to assist the FOIA officers throughout the district in doing their jobs and you being able to do your job in ensuring some level of open government access to information.
Great.
Does the Office of the Attorney General have administrative access to provide, legal assistance? Do they normally provide legal assistance to FOIA officers?
Well, let me explain the history. The history had been that there was an attorney in the Office of the Attorney General prior to my arrival that basically served as the city's FOIA officer and provided formal and informal advice. Mm-hmm. As it stands now, the involvement of the Office of the Attorney General only comes at the litigation phase when an agency is being sued for noncompliance. Mm-hmm. You will notice in your briefing materials that the response to my question asking if the Office of the Attorney General, and that's question number 4, would be given viewing access to review native files, non-public, and unredacted files produced in response to FOIA requests. Their response was no, OAG can continue to work with agencies to get the information they need. Now, to me, that seems to defy the purpose of the system. It would be for, particularly if there's litigation afoot, for that agency to be able to review all those documents in electronic format since they're being processed in that manner.
So then you will be very specific in your letter, the request that we're going to sign, what it is that you need to be able to make your job, to do your job.
Oh, most certainly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Additionally, it begs the question, though, since I have received the formal request from a member of the public via the ACLU to investigate what has occurred with the FOIA Express implementation and requesting that the mayor fulfill its requirements, we'll have to work out administratively how that's going to be handled, whether it's to be included in this letter or separate from this communication with the mayor's office.
Right. And I think that to the extent that we have a complaint that may require an investigation, we will handle that in the manner in which we handle our other complaints that require investigation.
Okay.
Have you made any FOIA requests to other agencies to test out the system?
No, I don't. I think that would be in poor form right now. I know that many FOIA officers are having difficulty with the system itself, in addition to just dealing with a new system and tackling the learning curve there. I think that the reason that the vendors started to receive so many trouble tickets in the last week and a half is because I did send out the FOIA officer training invitation directing FOIA officers to please spend some time in the system ahead of the training. So I don't need to poll them. It's pretty clear to me that many of the FOIA officers that do have access to the system are either learning it or having a great deal of difficulty just getting the security patch installed to be able to use the system.
All right. Well, thank you very much for all your efforts. I understand how frustrating it is for you, and we'll jump on in and see if we can do something here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Item 6, report by the Director of Government Ethics, Mr. Sobin.
Thanks. Good afternoon, Board. I'm going to keep this relatively short today and move through it rather quickly owing to the press of the impending hearing coming on Monday and our short staff this week and last. Just a quick update on our statistics. We opened 8 investigations this past month. We closed 5. We have a current total of 13 investigations open at the moment. Item B, our publication and reporting obligations. 2 items. Number 1, the list of financial disclosure statement public filers and non-filers was published in the D.C. Register on Friday, June 13th, 2014. As required by the statute. This was prior to the June 15th, 2014 statutory deadline. Item 2, the quarterly complaints report, which we as the title suggests, we file quarterly. This one from April 1st to June 30th was posted this week on our website. It shows 33 closed investigations since the beginning of the fiscal year, and as I said, 13 active investigations. Trainings. We didn't have time to attend any by our staff this past month, but we conducted quite a number. And again, it's going up every month. This month we conducted 8 total trainings, and these included 2 for the DC Retirement Board, 2 for the Department of Employee Services. We did a monthly ethics training for district-wide folks that was supposed to be 50 people. We ended up having an overflow crowd of 100, in which we had to use 2 rooms and 2 instructors, myself and Mr. Burns, to conduct parallel trainings. Even at that point, demand was so great that we were turning people away, including some members of MPD, which I was very upset to hear about, but it just shows the interest in our district-wide monthly ethics trainings, and we're going to be continuing that on, for right now, a monthly basis, and pretty soon, I think, as soon as we have the staff, we're going to increase that. We also had a visiting delegation from Kenya in Africa, and very interesting to hear what they're doing over there in the area of ethics. And we were able to get some good ideas from them, and we gave them some good suggestions. And then we did our 2 new employee orientations, which occur bi-weekly.
Can I just interject? We actually did attend, the 4 of us attended a training put on by the Office of the Inspector General. Myself, Mr. Burns, Ms. Olawumni, and Mr. Cook, an investigator training.
Oh, excellent.
Good. Sorry about that. All right. Advisory opinions, we issued 1. This one, let's see. This one, again, it's continuing a theme of outside activities. And I'm glad people are asking, because it's an area that really needs to be fleshed out. And I think we did so more in this one. This one involved an employee that had a second job with an outside entity that actually is considered a prohibited source before the district. There's no specific rule that says you can't, but we went with appearance of impropriety. We said no, and we actually found a good U.S. Office of Government Ethics opinion on the same issue.
Right, I want to commend the office for taking the time, because it's a very thorough opinion, and the reliance and citing to the federal OGE legal advice memo, I think, is very powerful.
Okay, thanks. We have none pending at the moment. At least no formal requests. We we responded to 47 requests for informal advice, again, mostly in the form of email. Financial disclosure matters. We've started hearing from agencies who are reviewing the FDS forms of confidential filers. Remember, the ones that don't file with us, right. You file with your agency, they have to review it and let us know if there's anything astray. So far, not a lot of big problems, but the agencies do call with questions, which is good. But in one case in particular, an agency did a formal memo to us which disclosed 3 potential conflicts of interest. We're looking into those. But it's very encouraging that they're actually looking at these things and notifying us about it.
Absolutely.
And as we discussed at the last board meeting, pursuant to the candidates, the issue that we talked about.
Right. The legislation was eventually signed.
Exactly,
right.
Yes. So what we did with our publication requirement was we published the names of filers and non-filers. All candidates were removed from all lists. And then we added an addendum, as the board had requested, stating that the reason there were no candidate names on the list was because of the pending legislation, which, thanks to Mr. Grimaldi, we had a citation for, and then that if that legislation passed, as we expected it would, the candidate names would not need to be published this year.
Right.
Yeah. So that went out sort of as we had discussed
Good.
last time.
Very good. And I know that I signed
Yes.
the first of
yes.
the onslaught of letters informing the candidates that they no longer needed to file, and that their non-compliance with the earlier letter was not a problem.
Yes, and we do appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
Okay, item F, lobbyist matters. As you know, the lobbyist activity reporting period is due today. The end of the period is today.
Right.
For the preceding 6 months. It has proceeded well, but again, our staff is becoming overextended whenever staffers must manually input hard copy filings into our electronic lobbyist database. And so in response, I'm anticipating doing a rulemaking for submission to the board that would require electronic filing only in the future from lobbyists, except where there can be good cause shown. Initially, I was worried that we needed legislation to do it, but after we did an internal interpretation and actually corresponded with staff on the council, we determined that our current enabling legislation actually gives us the ability to make it a requirement because it allows us to prescribe the form of the filing.
And and this is something we've batted around now for a year, and certainly it is the right way to go. And as long as there is a good cause exception for those who can't do it for some reason, I think that we should be bringing the whole lobbyist registration system up to speed, especially since it's all been redone, if you will, to make it a lot easier to do. So
Right.
I think you'll get a lot of support here, I think, for the rulemaking.
Okay, I think we should be able to have it ready pretty soon.
Well, how's good cause going to be established?
We'll have to flesh that out in the rules. It can either be great discretion or we can lay out some factors.
Because if it's as hard to get permission to file by paper, as it is to maybe figure out a computer system, if it's not something you have handy at your fingertips, then we're just replacing one burden with another. I'm really not wedded to the idea of mandatory electronic filing. There are a few like small mom and pop lobbyists out there.
Well, I'll give you another reason why it's important, and not just from a reducing stress on the staff perspective, but one of our recurring issues is when we get information on a hard copy sheet of paper that has to be input into our system, and our staff must do some sort of an interpretation if the information is not clear. And I don't want our staff to be interpreting things that could be directly input by the applicant.
I mean, because the handwriting is not clear?
No, the problem is because on the form itself, for example, it dictates the way that you're supposed to report a meeting. Date, time, who it's with, and what the meeting discussed. And people who fill out the form online have to fill out each time they add a meeting, have to fill it out exactly the same way. People who simply submit to us, and this is not an exaggeration, 30 pages of meetings that then have to be manually inputted by Eric Younger, our staff person who does this. 30 pages just of meetings. That's not including the rest of the report itself. Don't do them in that format. They put dates in different places. They put meeting places in different places. They put names into different places. So we then have to go through, either Eric or myself, and either call the person and figure out, what does this mean? What did you mean by this? Can you tell me what you meant by this? Or, as Darrin said, interpret it ourselves. And at that point, the issue becomes, are we then putting something into our system and publishing something that is not, in fact, correct?
What percentage of lobbyist reports are you getting filed on hard copy?
Right now, I would estimate it to be at about somewhere between 35 and 40%. It's still quite high. And the amount that we get that are extensive reports, like the 30-page one is not uncommon. Mm-hmm. Eric spends a great deal of time simply entering in data like that, and it's really something that takes an extreme amount of time for him to do, which I know that we're not simply stressing on that, but just me personally having watched the whole process go through.
So I gather anyone who's filing that lengthy a lobbyist report is a pretty sophisticated shop. So why aren't they filing electronically?
I have no idea.
They don't feel like it. I have a theory.
I really sympathize with the position that you're in, and I do think that we should ask people to file electronically. We don't. I mean, this is the era that we live in. I mean, but I think maybe you want to ease them into it. So maybe you say, okay, on X date, you give notice that from henceforth it's going to be electronically, unless you can have a good cause showing. You come up with a criteria. So if it's a mom and pop shop, that kind of thing. And it makes for more accurate filing. And, you can purposefully be, well, I don't mean to put it this way, but I think it would make the lobbyists more precise in their filings if they were doing electronically instead of just kind of scribbling their notes. And so I think it's more beneficial to them, as well. So, I mean, my position is essentially go electronic with adequate notice that you're going electronic. And I just think that's, another option is to say, if you don't go electronic, we're going to charge you a fee for having to input this. But I don't think
we
that's
were
the way to
actually,
go.
we were looking at that option, but we decided we did not have the authority to do that. But we do have the authority to require it. So that's why we decided to go.
So
And
it's,
just to give you an idea, I understand that the lobbyist system can be complex and difficult to navigate, especially if you're not familiar with a system like it. What we did in December was I went through and I took what are called screenshots, which is essentially a picture of each page as you go through it. And so there's a training PowerPoint currently on our website that needs to be slightly updated just because our website address has changed, but there are screenshots of each step that you go through for the registration and the activity report. And we have done trainings, and I absolutely know that we would do more to take people through it step by step to show them exactly what they needed to do. And myself and Eric have both answered phone calls where we can log in and be on the same page as someone and say, okay, here you are now. Let me take you through this, where we essentially end up acting as IT customer service. Yeah. But we have done that, and we absolutely would be willing to continue doing that and want to continue doing that if it means everyone would file electronically.
Yeah, customer service is not an issue. We provide it in spades.
so let's do this. I mean, obviously the devil's in the details in terms of the rule and what the good cause exception would be. So why don't you go ahead and get that to us. We'll consider it. Maybe we can go ahead and act preliminarily at the next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Budget matters. Our fiscal year 2015 budget came through the final council review process unscathed, and if the mayor has not signed the legislation yet, he is expected to do so shortly, I believe. Item H, the Comprehensive Code of Conduct. As we mentioned previously, our Capital City Fellow, Mike Beckham, who's sitting on the dais with you,
AKA Jack Grimaldi's
has been working on the Comprehensive Code of Conduct as well as a committee report. I use the term, I know it's a term of art, but it's designed to really help the council draft their committee report. It's an explanation type document to detail how we decided to make the changes, our intent and the meaning and the scope of the certain portions that we have included. Both of the documents are coming along nicely, and we anticipate sending them to you in approximately 2 weeks so that you'll have time to review them and we can discuss them at the Ethics Board meeting in August. I also want to report that I have completed my personal meetings with all council members and or their staff and received some very useful comments from them, which we are incorporating into the draft Comprehensive Code of Conduct. It was a bit of a process meeting with all 13 of them, but Mr. Beckham was with me on almost all of them, and I think we both found it to be quite enlightening as to what they thought, and just as a sort of a personal touch to be inclusive in this process.
Certainly. Thank you very much for taking the time to do that.
No problem. I also like to mention that we're going to be without the services of Mr. Beckham shortly, unfortunately, as his rotation is coming to an end. We've applied for another Capital City Fellow. Our plan is that if we do get one, particularly one with computer skills, we'll have that person work on developing our online training program along with the Office of Open Government. Okay, on to item I, non-confidential investigations. I'm only going to mention 2 today. The OAH investigation, which is scheduled for Monday to commence the enforcement proceedings or the adversarial hearing. We held a pre-hearing conference last week. There were rulings on various motions. Subpoenas have been issued, and we're just about ready to go. Also, there's a court date in the case tomorrow, July 11th, which OAG is handling for us. It's a continuation of the previously filed case. As you may recall, the Court of Appeals issued an order to the Superior Court ordering it to dismiss the case. Judge Holman has ordered a status conference prior to doing so. We presented to the Ethics Board in the same case electronically a negotiated disposition with respondent Keo Odin Tyson. The 3 Ethics Board members voted electronically to approve the negotiated disposition, and that document has been signed by the chair. The disposition that respondent Tyson admitted in the disposition, Respondent Tyson admitted to 3 counts of the notice of violation, one involving financial conflicts of interest, another which prohibits losing independence or impartiality, and a third that prohibits employees from impeding government efficiency or economy. The total fine is $12,000. Further details of the agreement are provided in the document itself, which will be posted on the website shortly if it has not been already. I think we also have a couple of copies here in the room. Item II, AL 017-12, the Hicks case. The last court date was on May 30th, 2014. This was the one in which they took an appeal from the board's finding of sanctions. Judge Clark in the Superior Court put the matter off until July 19th, 2014 to wait for Judge Holman's ruling in the OAH case on whether the matter should be in the D.C. Court of Appeals instead of in the Superior Court.
Domino theory.
Yep. Okay, that concludes the Director of Government Ethics report.
Okay. At this point in our proceedings, we're going to go to a closed executive non-public session. But before we do so, we'd like to give any members of the public who would like to address the board an opportunity to do so, since we never know how long we'll be in closed session, and we don't want to make folks wait unnecessarily. So, Mr. Mulhauser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I give you some documents?
Certainly. And if it's a copy of your letter, we actually have it. Great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Fritz Mulhauser. I'm a senior staff attorney at the American Civil Liberties Union of the nation's capital, an affiliate of the National ACLU with 4,000 members in the district, and recently celebrating our 50th anniversary here. I recently wrote the director, as you heard already today, simply because the Freedom of Information Act is important in our work. We use it dozens of times every year, and it's not working as well now as it, even in its difficult past years, it's not working as well now as it has. I told her that in 8 recent requests, only 2 were done on time. It's a worse history than usual. Agencies are pleading backlog, claiming our requests are too voluminous for them to handle. And unfortunately, even though we've had good experience with the appeals process, that also seems to be backlogged. We sent an appeal of one of these difficult requests. We heard nothing, no acknowledgement. We queried the mayor's office. They only handle 80 a year. This is not a flood. They gave us no response to our query. We queried a second time and heard nothing. And only as the deadline was long past and I sent this letter, did they finally, almost a month after receiving our appeal, start their process of asking the agency what's going on. I commend to you most urgently to look at the FOIA system. There are thousands of requests every year, over 6,000. The system needs modernization in so many ways, as I'm sure your director has told you, and the role of this office in overseeing it is paramount. There is no other entity in DC government that has the mandate to take a look at the FOIA system and make sure it's serving the citizens well. I gave you a second document, which is a report that I did simply from the public record on how well the FOIA system is working. My report is about how well it's working, drawn from the formal record. But here's just a few reasons why it's so important for you to take a look at FOIA. Why is the rate of approval going down? Only 60% of requests were granted in full last year. That's down from 75% a year ago. What's going on here? Why is the backlog up? Almost 500 requests were left on the table last year. That's almost 10% of the total. What's going on here? That's double the rate from the previous year. They can't get their work done out there. Why do a small number of agencies reject a great many of the requests? The rate is astonishingly varied. The Office of Police Complaints, a small agency, contributes now 35% of the rejections across DC government, replacing MPD, which used to be the most frequent flyer in that area of rejecting requests. And why is there a high error rate? These are some systemic questions about FOIA. 40% of the appeals are sent back by the mayor, sent back to the agencies because of mistakes. 40%. That's a striking rate. How many of the denials that are never appealed also contained such errors? And when a tiny number of people do actually go to court, why is DC defending and losing so frequently? Last year, there were 37 cases in court. 62% came from the Fraternal Order of Police. We know about that story. They're at odds with the MPD over many things. They don't think they get the information they need, and so they sue. But the district lost 13 of the 26 cases that were decided last year. They're losing half the time. As you heard earlier, wouldn't it be good if the Attorney General responsible for these cases was involved earlier so that losing cases didn't take years in Superior Court? They lost 80% the year before, so they're doing a little better. And DC paid out almost $200,000 in fees and costs last year, which is 6 times the total from some previous years combined, although it is down from the $350,000 they paid in 2012. So we've got money going out the door in attorneys' fees and costs when the district loses FOIA litigation. So I cite those numbers from my paper that I gave you just to suggest the FOIA system needs your help and oversight. It needs an Office of Open Government that has the resources and the institutional mandate and backing of your board to take a look at FOIA and make it work for all citizens. And especially if FOIA Express is a bit of the problem now, you need to be in the conversation and be helpful. I asked, for example, for the contract for FOIA Express so I could read it to see what we've bought. The Office of Contracts, to my FOIA request, said, "We don't have a contract." I said, "No, you do." They looked again. They said, "Well, the council has a contract." I called up my friends in the council. They said, "Yeah, we did, but we didn't like it, and we canceled." I said, "Thank you." I went back to the Office of Contracts and said, "Please look again." They found the contract. Well, it's only a few pages because they ordered from a GSA schedule. So I then asked the Office of the Mayor for how are the agencies being guided and with what instructions, because you can't find that in these contract documents I got. And they haven't answered my request. So there's something going on behind the scenes which we in the public don't know about. There's no transparency about what's going on. An agency head told me that she countermanded instructions to her staff to go back and re-enter all prior FOIA requests because it would be such a diversion of present resources. Perhaps those 8 requests of mine that have been troubled in recent weeks are caught up in a process of implementation of the new system. So for both present problems and more generally, I commend FOIA to you as a subject for your most earnest study and investigation, and that'll help the public. Thank you.
Do you find that Aon provides good training, the provider?
I have no idea. AIS.
Ains, are you referring to the vendor?
Yes.
Is the provider in Gaithersburg, and I asked in my request to see what is the training and what is the commitment of support. This is going to be a complex long-term adventure, and I wanted to see how much support is envisioned in the contract, and it's not possible to say.
To answer your question concerning training, FOIA officers have been trained, to my knowledge, at least 3 times on FOIA Express. The first notice concerning training went out shortly after the beginning of the year. We received training late in January, but nothing was done with the system. When implementation was announced on June 13th, it also included a notice to FOIA officers that they could sit in on web-based training on June 16th and I think also June 17th, somewhere thereabouts. I participated in the training. I can say that FOIA Express has been providing the training. Every conversation I've had with the vendor, they've made it very clear that they're, in addition to providing the web-based training, they are also taking questions directly from the agencies concerning the system itself and responded to my inquiry. I'm just getting access to the system. There's also a step-by-step, another screenshot user's manual that's been provided to all of the FOIA officers. So I think that at least the vendor seems to be doing everything possible to provide FOIA officers with the proper support, but it's a system and it has to be learned. So just much like software or any other tool that one has to use and become familiar with, FOIA Express is no different.
I believe you have used it in the past, did you say? Just one time?
No, this is my first time using FOIA Express.
I have seen a demonstration of the system, and it is extremely sophisticated and complicated. And if we're buying the full system for the District of Columbia, it'll take staff a while to learn to use it for keeping track of requests and for manipulating requests so that the redactions and other steps after you have done a search are done properly. It's a very sophisticated system adopted by other states, provinces of Canada, and so on. So they have extensive experience developing it for users like us, but it's not something that you pick up in a moment.
I was trained to use it, and I found that it's the kind of system, as you say, that you really can't learn unless you're doing it all day, every day for a while, and I'm not sure that's how our FOIA officers really operate in many of our agencies.
It's certainly understandable that anytime you bring on a new system, there are going to be bumps in the road, especially one as complicated and sophisticated as FOIA Express. The thing that is extraordinarily disheartening is the backward slide in responsiveness that's occurred since this whole process has gone on, and shutting out of our office and the lack of responsiveness to the request doors. So I hear what you're saying, Mr. Mulhauser, and take it very seriously, and I think that we will discuss amongst ourselves how to proceed in a way that will ensure that we're serving our mission, which is to provide the oversight that at least someone envisioned that we would be giving to the FOIA system. So thank you very much.
Can I ask one question, though?
Certainly.
Do you make a FOIA request of the federal government, and if so, how does their response compare to the district?
Not nearly so often, because we are the ACLU affiliate focused on the district, but in general, there are delays and claims of exemption that need appeals and challenges, but my experience is just too limited to say much at the federal level.
Thank you.
I did hear a report from a federal, a private group that oversees federal open government initiatives, and the consensus was that, notwithstanding Attorney General Holder's statement at the beginning of the administration that this would be a very open government, that the federal government has also gone backwards. So this seems to be perhaps an offshoot of the security state we're looking at.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, the time is 1:55, and we'll go ahead and at this time I'll entertain a motion to move us into an executive non-public session to discuss ongoing confidential investigations pursuant to DC Official Code 2-575B14, to deliberate on a decision in which the Ethics Board will exercise quasi-judicial functions pursuant to DC Official Code 2-575B13, and personnel matters pursuant to DC Official Code 2-575B10. If I can get a motion? Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. And all those in favor, say aye. Aye. So we'll go ahead and do that. I will say that we come back on the public record at the conclusion of this meeting. I don't think it's going to be very long, but I can't promise you how long it's going to be. And I don't expect at this point any major announcements at the conclusion of the closed session. But then again, any member of the public is welcome to wait until we're done.
Mr. Chairman, before, I would be very happy to hear from our visitor if she would favor us with a few words. Yeah, you. Yeah, you in the pink. Would you please come forward and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you happen to be here in Washington, D.C.?
Is it on? My name's Nia Camera. I came from DC. We went to, well, I flew, but Auntie Deborah, she went to Columbus, Ohio, and we watched the fireworks at Columbus, Ohio. So then I came back with her, and I'm 12 years old, and I play the violin.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That was great, and I hope that our proceedings today have been interesting to you and given you food for thought.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your stay. Okay. With that, we will take a 5-minute recess before starting the closed session.
Oh. Traci. Traci. Can we shut that? No, please shut it.